a day is literally like you working on another job. And if you're not being productive on it, then it's even worse. So
Hmm.
what you can do is actually set limits for particular apps. For example, for my social media apps like YouTube and Instagram, that's the only ones I have, and Twitter, I have a limit of 30 minutes, like all combined. Now, there is a feature also like you can deactivate this as you open it, because like sometimes you just want to check is already like blocked. You click on it and it gives you like an extra 15 minutes. I tend to to do that, but it kind of helped me from looking back from like a year ago where I was spending more time on social media than. This is a conversation between friends.
None of what is said here should be taken as legal advice.
We are not experts in any way.
Take what resonates and leave the rest.
Go.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Back again. This time, not a podcast. This time it's just us sitting here, just chilling, talking about or listening or reacting to whatever we find across the internet that seems interesting and worth talking about that we didn't talk about during the week. So for today's little reaction, or what we're doing for today, we're going to be reacting to a clip from the Joe Rogan podcast. The title of the clip is the pandemic enabling phone addiction? And yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good, interesting topic to be honest to talk about. So I just want to see what they say or what they argue. And without further ado, let's go ahead and click play on this video. All right.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
I think it's going to be incredibly hard for us to resist the temptation to do that. And that's going to create a literal physical barrier between human beings. I think we're all going to be living in our own little universes eventually if things go the way they've been going.
Well, if I was conspiratorially minded, and I kind of am, but only for fun, I would think that someone has probably set that ball in motion with COVID. With COVID and the lockdown, it's almost like if you wanted to make a movie where artificial intelligence wanted to figure out a way to hook us deeper, artificial intelligence would release a virus. And they would force us to stay inside. It doesn't kill everybody, but it makes people scared. So you stay inside, and it connects you even deeper to computers, and maybe more importantly, separates you even more from the human experience of touching and being around each other in social cues and social gathering. And it makes it even more compelling to do things virtually, more compelling to be on your computer all the time and messing with applications. And then while this is all going on, something far more immersive is released when you're already accustomed to it.
Yeah, I've got to say, I mean, life in the last decade in particular has got way stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
The real world right now, there is so much about it that just seems like it can't be real. You know, if anyone wrote a movie with the script of the last 5 to 10 years.
How about the last 4 here?
Or the last 4. Let's pick the last 4.
Just
People
that.
would say this is yeah, it's not it's nonsense. Yeah. Like it's kind of B-grade Hollywood stuff that we're looking at here. But you know, the interesting thing about this pandemic period for me is I think it might have a weird backlash effect where we've all been forced to spend time on screens. It's instead of going to the screen because we love it and we're attracted to social media and whatever other things we're doing on screens, a lot of us are being forced to use them. And one thing that's changed is sentiment towards screens. I think a lot of people are just over it. And so when we are past all of this, I think there's a chance that's going to be the catalyst to push people away from screens a bit. Because if you before this, if you speak to especially younger people, they'll say, and then this is true for me too, I would rather just use the most remote form of communication possible, whatever's easiest. I don't want to have to speak on the phone. I don't want to have to see people. Let me just send a quick text or an email or a WhatsApp or whatever. And I think there's a shift now where people are like craving that true face-to-face time where you're actually sitting in front of a person having a real conversation. And that's been, I think, a shift in the last roughly 8 or 9 months.
I think there's people like you that are craving the experience of being around other folks, because I think you're aware of the repercussions of this virtual experience that we're all engaging in, and the addiction to screens and screen time and phones and games and applications. But I think there's plenty of folks that are happy to just get lulled to sleep and sucked into it. And I think that's my real concern. My real concern is mindful, thoughtful people like yourself that are, that are saying, listen, we need, just a real experience with human beings, and we're revolting and leaving but if you look at the numbers in terms of human beings, like the average screen time, all that stuff's going up. Use of these things is all going up. And I think there's folks like you that would like to think that we're rejecting it, but I think it's a minority that's rejecting it. I think the majority are embracing it.
Yeah, I think that may be true. I mean, I think one of the big drivers of screen time is, if you take psychological needs away from people, the things that are really important to them to function psychologically, that's when they turn to screens. That's when they turn to drugs. That's when they turn to alcohol. That's when they turn to all the things that soothe us. And screens do that. They are a kind of a non-substance way to be soothed. That's what happened with me on that flight for 6 hours. That's what happens when you're on social media scrolling mindlessly, when you're watching tons and tons of videos online. All that sort of stuff is a way of soothing you. And I think people need to be soothed more than ever right now, because this is a hard time for a lot of people. It's hard financially. It's hard because you're socially distant from people. It just creates this kind of pall of uncertainty that sits above everything we do. And humans hate that. We don't like uncertainty. We don't like not knowing what's coming around the corner. And not just about the pandemic. I mean, politically, in a lot of different ways, there's a lot of uncertainty right now and for the last while. And when you put people in that state, they're going to turn to screens. I don't know if that's an enduring thing, but anytime you rob people of well-being, of some sort of psychological need, they're going to try to find it elsewhere. And one of the ways they do that is, now the easiest way to do it is to turn to a screen.
Episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience are now free on Spotify.
Okay. Interesting.
How long was that? How long was that clip?
That was like 9 minutes.
That's fine. Okay.
Why? Okay. So what's your intake from this? Do you agree with them to begin with?
Yeah, no. Yeah, pretty much 100%, honestly. Like nowadays, I kind of find myself in like these situations where I'm like, man, I've been looking at a screen all day for pretty much everything that I have to do. Right. Mm-hmm. And, because, I like doing my trading and my investing, a lot of that is involving screens all day. And then, we're doing this, right? So we're doing this on screens all day. If I want to kick back and relax and watch some sort of entertainment or play video games, that happens on a screen all day. So, I would say that screen addiction is definitely going up, particularly phone, right? Because a lot of times people have a tendency of just, when they're not doing anything, they just mindlessly open the phone up, right? They check the Instagram, they check the YouTube videos, they check this, that, or the third. And yeah, like on the iPhone, right? At the end of the week, they give you a recap of the screen time that you've used. And, I've been fluctuating from anywhere from about like 6 to 8 hours a day, which that's a lot. And, a lot of that time is spent really just me looking at stocks and stuff. But I would wager to say that a lot of people also spend that same amount of time just looking at Instagram stuff or just looking things up on the internet or social media, whatever the case is. So yeah, like 6 to 8 hours, that's literally like working a job, like a 9 to 5 job, right? So that's how much time people nowadays, at least for myself, putting in on a daily basis into screens.
Right. Yeah, definitely. The feature on the iPhones that, allows you to see the screen is in my opinion, is very helpful. And it helps you be aware of how much you're spending on daily basis, weekly basis, and also even on the computers, that option is available. For example, I have it activated in both my computer and my phone. Now, when it comes to me, similarly, I do spend most of my time in the computer. I literally wake up and boom, I have to turn off my computer, check emails. We record this podcast, of course, and also like for my job, like I work virtually, and I spend hours, just doing, interacting with people through a screen. Whereas, sometimes I do have to go out and, for example, for appointments. This week I had a few appointments. I also had to go return a few stuff in the mall. and I didn't feel anxious. I was surprised I wasn't anxious, like to be out there, because I'm a social butterfly. Like I literally am a communicator. I literally need social interaction with people. So for me, being out there and communicating with people like in real life is it's something that I crave. Like today
Right.
I'm in the city because I need to be out of this four walls.
Right.
But I agree that with Joe that there are people who are getting used to it. Like they actually love staying home and just interact with people through a screen.
Hmm.
Those people who maybe they don't like like a lot of people they post on social media like, oh, I don't like people, blah blah. We are humans. We are social animals, literally.
Hmm.
So we need a social interaction, and one-to-one like person, it's something that it's part of our nature. In I feel like comparing it 5 years or like even 10 years back days when phones were not a thing, or we didn't have like that easy access to it, we were more connected and more social overall.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
one thing that I want to say also, like with the app, with the screen timer, I do try to keep mine an average of 5 hours a week, because I've been conscious about it. Like like you mentioned, if you spend like 8 hours to like 10 hours a day, is literally like you working on another job, and if you're not being productive on it, then it's even worse. So
Hmm.
what you can do is actually set limits for particular apps. For example, for my social media apps like YouTube and Instagram, that's the only ones I have, and Twitter, I have a limit of 30 minutes, like all combined. Now, there is a feature also like you can deactivate this as you open it, because like sometimes you just want to check is already like blocked. You click on it and it gives you like an extra 15 minutes. I tend to to do that, but it kind of helped me from looking back from like a year ago where I was spending more time on social media than I needed to comparing to now. I have made such a big progress, because before, like you, I was spending like roughly about 7 to 8 hours a day on the screen, especially when the pandemic started. I was
Hmm.
on social media very active, but nowadays I just like go to social media just to some maybe I want to share something that I'm doing. Like yesterday I shared like my coffee. It was an interesting one. Or like I was just waiting for my GT, or when I have to repost, or like a little social marketing that I have to do for the podcast and for other business that I kind of take over. Because if a lot of you guys don't know, I'm a freelancer for web development and social media
Hmm.
marketing. So sometimes I do actually need to be interacting.
So, hit your boy up if you need some
Not free
services.
website. I almost say free website. Some websites and help with your branding. But yeah, so I'm something that I'm taking off a little bit more, putting more and more time on it,
Hmm.
because my goal is to, you know, actually that's my goal is to go out there, like literally explore the world and meet new people and
Hmm.
crave that, like that interaction, like human interaction. Because
Right.
if you go to, okay, I wrote a paper last semester about technology justice. And something that I found is that almost half of the people in the globe, they don't have access to internet. Believe it or not, there are people out there that never seen internet. Like they don't know what internet is. They might have like a phone or computers, but they don't use as much internet. Now they don't have access because of the infrastructures. If you know about third world countries, companies are not going to invest on third world countries if they don't see potential profits. So that's one of the challenges that people are trying to solve, such as Google with like little globes, like they literally created like a balloon to send it on the air and just spread out internet across. And even Elon Musk, he was involved in like um, creating internet, or like connecting more people in the dots, because there's almost half of the population on Earth that don't have access to the internet. So there are people out there. So if you travel, you're going to notice this. For example, literally last year, I was in Cuba. And internet is it's not as is not as common, or like you gotta pay for it. It's expensive to get access to it. So not a lot of
Luxury.
access. It's a luxury, yes. And these people, they were connected. Like literally every weekend, you go out there like to the streets, and they were like, dancing salsa. Of course, maybe now for the pandemic it might be different, but they were more connecting than you see here. Like, it was funny actually, because there were like public access, like parks in certain public areas where they have like the antennas for Wi-Fi, but you had to buy a card for like a peso, or like, which is, and actually it's a one cook, and you pay for it, and it gives you like 30 minutes, right? And all the tourists, you know what they used to do? They go to the park, and you see them like this on the phone, because they can afford it. They're tourists, of course, and I was one of them as well sometimes. But yeah, so it's interesting to see that, like, the cultural shock, like the differences between other parts of the globe. So just to cut it short, is the pandemic enabling phone addiction? I think yes. Why?
Yeah.
Back pre-pandemic times, we had to commute to school. And just in that commune, you sometimes talk to people, like, like maybe just to that driver, or people around there, or, you're trying to make friends, or you just shoot your shot, or you like a girl, and like on your way to school, shoot your shot. It was easier. Nowadays, also we have like that online dating, which, guys, they don't want to like take the risk. They just like,
Yeah.
I used to do that back in the days, but now I don't have any dating.
Now you're a big boy.
I'm a big boy now. I don't need them. But yeah, so it's interesting that we're shifting towards a world with technology is pretty much running our lives, and rather than we using that technology for advantage, that technology is using us. Because remember, every second that you spend on an app, every second that you spend on your phone, your data is getting collected. And guess who getting the most benefits out of it? The companies that own it. For example,
Because they
iPhone.
just take that info and just advertise it back into all the information or all the media that you consume, so that potentially you'll buy something that you see from advertisement.
Yeah, and it's interesting because sometimes you search for something. Like, my only social media that I use very, very frequently is YouTube, just because I like to watch such as podcasts, or something just like inform. Like, I always like to learn, so I usually follow like political economics and Economics Explained. So they explain about economies. They have really good topics. You should definitely check it out. I've been sending you videos about them too. Really good content. So I'll be watching them, and each episode is like to within like 20 to 40 minutes. So that's the biggest.
So here's a question for you, right? So so I say that I'm spending about an average of 6 to 8 hours on a weekday on the screen. But a lot of my time is being spent doing productive things, right? Because I'm trading, I'm investing, I'm looking at videos for trading and investing, or I'm looking at videos or podcast clips that, they're usually informative. Sometimes they can be about entertainment. Nowadays, I don't have a Netflix subscription. I don't have anything related to just mindless entertainment, right? Everything that I do is usually active. So the question is, even though I'm being productive with the time that I'm using on screens, because it's so much, do you think that's still an issue? Because to me, I still find it to be an issue, simply because I'm not interacting with the world. I'm too in this bubble. I'm in this box, and like, even though there's a lot of good stuff happening, because there's no balance, it's just too much of one thing. It can become overwhelming. Like, at times I'm like, man, I'm really tired of looking at screens and trying to figure all this stuff out. And I need a change of a pace, a change of scenery. I just need something to change, because this has become so overwhelming, so time consuming. So what do you think? Do you think even if you're making all that time you're using on screens productive, is that still a bad thing?
It's definitely bad. It will have some consequences later on. In the future, we are like, right now, we are literally the lab rats, or like the lab rats for it. Because think about it, like, okay, let's compare it with cigarettes. We know the risk, we know the consequences of smoking a cigarette because it's been on like with us for like centuries now, centuries. So we have collected all this data. We have seen the progress from a person who just start beginning smoking until they die, and we have multiple cases, right? So we can conclude that cigarettes are bad because it's a clear association with it.
Right.
Now, us, our generation, we are pretty much the first generations that start using the screens. Because I remember when I moved to this country, I got my first phone. Well, technically, it was my official first, like a smartphone with a screen. And we seen the evolution of the smartphone, just the smartphone. Like, think about it. It came with the screen, then later on, move on to like iPhones. Then we had iPads. Then we have like computers. Now we have like bigger screens for the computers, and now we have VR. So we are experimenting. Literally, we are the first generations who are going through this. So our data will be used later on in the future to see what were the consequences. For example, there are talks about like 5G and 4G consequences. Like they are big. There are talks. They're kind of like predictions that it might, have an effect in our bodies to like cause cancer, right? But we don't know yet because it's so short, like amount of time that we've been with this technology. So like maybe like a decade or 15 years, that it's not clear what are the clear consequences of us using this for a long term. In similar case happened with vapes. If you guys remember, like a couple years ago, vapes were a thing. Like you can buy it.
Everybody loved vaping, bro.
Exactly. Like it was the safest thing before after cigarettes. Like like an alternative for cigarettes. Blah blah blah. But what happens few years after, once that people start using it, they start showing symptoms. And studying it into a long term, they predicted that it was actually worse than cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
So similar case, you can argue with like technology. So regarding of like it's good or bad, it's definitely good. It's going to have effects in your body, like like health wise. And also,
I mean, you can already see it. Look, we both wear glasses, right?
absolutely, yeah. And I like something my eyes itch of like being in the screen. Like I literally have to change the settings on my screen, on my biggest screen, to like a little bit lower bright as the the night changes. And one thing also that I mentioned, one thing that you mentioned about changing, the environment or wanting to change something to somewhere else, is that you can actually changing literally the physical. Like for example, I spend most of my time in my room, but sometimes when I feel like a little bit that I'm feeling a little bit kind of trapped or boxed, just me walking to my other desk, my standing desk, it kind of like refreshes me. It's kind of like throwing me a cold water. It refreshes me completely, and I can concentrate a little better.
Yeah.
Or going to the living room. So changing the scenery definitely helps when it comes to interacting with a screen all the time. But at the same time, we are social beings. We need that connection with like people. So you should.
Yeah, I would definitely say that one of the things is just try to find a really good balance of obviously with the pandemic everything's closed down and stuff, but there's definitely ways for you to be able to communicate and socialize with people. Like I have the benefit that I work for a gym, right? So I'm always constantly in front of people, so I'm always getting that interaction, whether it be good or bad. It doesn't particularly matter. It's just the fact that I'm getting interactions with human beings.
Right.
We talk here on the screen, we're interacting with each other. It's not just us typing back and forth to each other, because that could just looking at that kind of screen can get really tedious and boring. I would say just find a good balance for yourself, just so that it's not so just so trapping, because it just feels like you're trapped in this box and you can't get out.
Right. And also another thing too, if you live with family members, definitely interact with them. Not just because it's good for you, but also like this is one thing that I have been practicing more and more, is that I think, like my parents are not going to be with me all the time. And I want to enjoy the most time. I kind of want to maximize my time with them. So
Mhm.
whenever they come home, I have dinner with them, I talk to them, and it also gives me that social, like the human interaction that I need on a daily
Right.
basis. But yeah, like for example, for me, I'm not, I don't have a job like you where I need, like, I have to connect with, like, talk to people, to real people. I am connecting
Mhm.
with people, but through a screen, which it can be a little bit, it's challenging. It's very challenging. I understand how schools, like little kids, are dealing with it, because if one who's an adult, it's finding it a little bit hard to get used to it. How little kids who they don't know the difference between, like, they kids, they like to play, they run
Yeah.
around crazy. It's sitting down stuck there. It's really bad. It's I don't know, it's creating a society who's just gonna be disconnected
Yeah.
from human interactions. But one thing I want to ask you, like, what do you think about, like, conspiracy theories? Something that I like listening to Joe Rogan podcast sometimes, because he's a very skeptical person, and
Hmm.
we talk about skepticism before in our podcast, that it's good to have, but I feel
Right.
like a little bit extra. So what do you think
So
about
if
conspiracy?
anything, I would feel like, let's leave that for another video,
Mhm.
and let's find a conspiracy theory, and then we can expand upon, that theory and the topic in itself, just so
Okay,
that we don't make this one too long, because, we can keep talking forever.
facts. All right. Then, in conclusion, yes, it's addicting. It's definitely becoming more and more addicting, especially with the social media. That's one of the reasons I haven't downloaded TikTok until now. It's not because,
Too late.
yeah, it's just, I don't know, but sometimes you don't want something, but that something comes to you. Because now Instagram has reels. I see myself sometimes on reels, but I try to see, kind of like control myself on that. I don't give more than, like I said, like the time save, like the screen, kind of like lock or whatever you
Yeah.
call it. It's very, very helpful. I would definitely recommend that, because literally, like, after, for example, like if I put an extra 15 minutes, after those 15 minutes, it block itself. And then you either choose to, like, go back or continue, or like you just click OK. And most of the times I see myself clicking OK and just moving on with my life. So in that way, I just spend 15 extra minutes on social media. And this kind of like starts kind of like shortening with time, because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
work, remember. Oh yeah, so remember, on the previous podcast we talk about, like, stress eating. So if you don't want to stress eat, you put it, like, on the tallest shelf,
Shelf. Hmm.
where in order for you to reach the food, you're going to, like, bring a chair, stand up, and grab it.
Grab it.
So
Yeah.
it makes it more difficult to get it.
Hmm.
Therefore, you most likely are not going to do it as frequently as before. So that's pretty much like the idea behind um, this kind of set timer on
Right.
the screen. And
Mhm.
yeah, so what do you think? What are your last thoughts on this?
Yeah, man. Just again, find a good balance with this. Just because, like I was saying, it's easy to convince yourself that just because you're spending all this time doing productive things in front of a screen, that you
Mm-hmm.
know your situation is different from the other people that are just sitting on their phone, watching stuff on social media or playing games on the phone or whatever the case might be.
Definitely.
Sure, you might be getting more benefit from just sitting in front of a screen, but there's still consequences to what's happening here. And again, one of the things is that we don't have or privy to or information about is the long-term effect of how this is going to affect us.
Mm-hmm.
So try to find yourself in a situation where, maximize your time in front of a screen, be as productive, be as efficient as you can with it. And then, balance that out with trying to interact with other people face to face, or doing outdoor activities. Just do something different. That way you're not just mindlessly in front of a screen all day. Because
Totally.
again, we already see one of the physical, repercussions of using screens all day. Our vision starts to diminish, and it's only going to get worse over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
What else is happening? There's a lot of talk about, like, blue. Well, I mean, we talked about it before with blue light affecting melatonin, which affects your sleep, It doesn't produce it while you're trying, like as the process of going to sleep is happening, so you can't really get good sleep. But there's also talk about like, Bluetooth and the signals that Bluetooth sends and emits and how that can be disruptive to other things in our body. Also Wi-Fi signals, right? Wi-Fi signals, phone lines, phone signals, this 5G development, all these things can kind of, like, we don't know what's going to happen long term. And, it could be nothing or it could be something. But at the end of the day, you should be diligent about just, having that all in your awareness, being aware of all these things, and take it as it comes, right? Like a lot of, like, I'll give you an example. So one of the things in the health industry that's kind of gone back and forth is the talks of cholesterol, consuming cholesterol, right? So for a long time, people were saying, or professionals were saying, health professionals, oh, eating eggs is unhealthy because it has cholesterol, has a lot of cholesterol, and that'll raise your cholesterol. Right. And that was in the past, right? Then you move forward a little bit more, and then the data switches. Actually, consuming cholesterol, or at least from eggs, doesn't actually raise your body's cholesterol. Dietary cholesterol doesn't raise your cholesterol. What does raise it is the fact that you're overweight, or you could be obese, or whatever the case might be. And the consumption of like saturated or trans fats, rather, that becomes super unhealthy. But that correlation and that understanding of the data only comes out in a long period of time once you can analyze a large segment of data. Right now, we don't have that with this, so we don't know what kind of effects are going to happen moving forward.
Definitely. And another like kind of effect that we have seen so far, aside of the vision, is bad posture.
Yeah.
So that's a huge one, especially if you're not active physically. It's something that a lot of people who are sitting down on the screen for most of the time, or even when you're standing up, you're gonna start developing the forward head posture, which is really bad. So try to do stretches.
Another thing is the sitting, right? So like prolonged bouts of sitting can eventually actually lead you to colon cancer, which people don't know, right? You never heard about it until now, probably. So that's, again, like, this is something that we don't talk about as in a mainstream perspective. So you really need to be diligent about all these things that we're using screens, we're using internet, and that's fine, but you're doing a bunch of little things on the side. Again, going back to that topic of cholesterol, right? Consuming the eggs with the cholesterol isn't a problem, but consuming trans fats and other different types of food that are unhealthy and make you fat, which is like a secondary effect, is a problem. So perhaps we end up finding out that looking at screens long term isn't too much of an issue, or all the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi signals, right? But the fact that you're sitting all day is a problem, because that can lead to something else. The fact that your vision is diminishing over time is another problem. Your posture is another problem. So these are all secondary effects that are happening here that most people don't talk about.
Yeah. So one thing that you can do for the vision, even if you don't have bad vision, get lenses with what do you call that?
Blue light blocking.
There you go. Thank you. That. So just get a pair of glasses with those. So if you're one of those persons that don't use glasses but spends a lot of time on the screen, definitely just get a pair of those. They're not more than $100, and it's going to be very beneficial for you health-wise. Then for bad posture, do some stretches in the morning or in the afternoon, whenever, or like do few stretches every here and there during that period of time, so you're not sitting like 8 hours straight. So take 15-minute break between, especially if you're a student. So you're going to have one class, then you're going to have free time, and then another class. Do something during that, that you're mobilizing your body. Don't be just sitting there all the time. And try to see some yoga postures. Like, honestly, yoga, it's very beneficial for you, just health-wise. It's really good.
If you take notice, though, like, if you've seen, I've been moving my positions here as we've been talking and stuff. That's entirely due to the fact that I'm trying to correct my posture, or not even correct my posture, but change it so that if I get tired from sitting in this position, switch over here, keep a good posture, but lean out so I'm not tiring out those muscles. Like, a really good thing that you can do, like you have there, is a standing setup, right? A sitting setup. And if you can have it as well, try to have like on the floor setup, so you can alternate between different settings as opposed to you just sitting stagnant on a chair.
Definitely.
Yeah,
for sure. Definitely, that's good for the posture. And yeah, so also, that's pretty much it, to be honest. Yeah, I think that concludes my intake on this. Is it good? Is it bad? It is bad, but we don't know it yet. We haven't
time will
seen.
tell how bad it will be.
Yeah, we're gonna start seeing the effects later on as we get older, and then we compare, like, our parents who don't use too much the technology as we are doing it, and compare their lifestyle comparing to ours. Now, another thing too, when you go to bed, leave your phone like as far away as you can in your room, because
Yeah,
time to time.
if you can leave it in a different room, that would be even better.
Absolutely, yes. Because one thing is that you don't want to go to sleep checking your phone, or just sleep using your phone, and then wake up and that's the first thing that you do. All right. So I've been practicing that. I literally just leave it on my desk, which is like right here. Then my bed is over there, so I'm not reaching out for it. And you don't crave that, because I know some people, like, they actually like crave using their phones.
Yeah, they need it.
Stop. All right, so that's my sign that I gotta go. But yeah, it was a really good conversation. Stop.
All right, we got it.
sorry, it's my Google acting crazy. But yeah, bro, it was a good conversation. Definitely, we're trying to, like, just implement new topics every Saturday. It's just random ones. It's just a talk.
Yeah.
This is not
next
going
one. We'll do a conspiracy theory next time, and
Yeah,
we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Definitely. We can talk about aliens, even though it's kind of like reality now.
I like that. I like that.
All right. Then
All right,
enjoy
guys.
the weekend, everybody. Take it.
We shall see you on the next episode, which should be coming out Monday, right? On the podcast. And that's it, man. Limit the screen times, find a balance. Don't go crazy.
Sweet. Very good. Peace out.
Peace.